May 1999. A test rider grips the throttle on a strange bulbous machine, painted in bronze and silver like some kind of sci-fi bird of prey. He leans forward. The asphalt blurs. The speedometer climbs. 270, 280, 300. But the engine isn't done. That inline four screams past 9,000 RPM. It slams into 312 kilometers per hour, 4 miles per hour. A record. The man shuts it down and rolls back into the garage. Everyone's silent. Then someone whispers, "We've done it." Suzuki engineers had just launched a bombshell on the world's motorcycle industry, and its name was Hayabusa. But this isn't a story about the motorcycle. This is the story of the machine inside it. The fire-breathing, regulation-breaking, fear-inducing 1,340 cubic centimeter engine that rewrote the rules of high-performance engineering. An engine so fast, it helped trigger a global speed ban. So advanced, it stood unchallenged for nearly 2 decades. And so dangerously misunderstood, it earned the nickname Widowmaker's Heart. Let's go back to where it all began. The 1999 Hayabusa. In the late 1990s, the fastest bike on the planet was Honda's CBR 1100 XX Super Blackbird, a sleek, fuel-injected missile. But Suzuki wasn't impressed. They wanted to build something faster, something scarier. They named it Hayabusa, the Japanese word for a peregrine falcon, a bird known to dive at over 300 kilometers per hour. They weren't joking. The first-generation Hayabusa engine was a 1,299 cubic centimeter, liquid-cooled inline four. But this wasn't just a bored-out GSXR engine. Suzuki engineers had a mission: create brutal power at the top end without sacrificing stability or reliability. They gave the motor a DOHC setup, 16 valves, and Keihin Denso fuel injection, all jammed into a wet sump configuration. The bore was a healthy 81 millimeters, with a short 63 millimeters stroke. That ratio favored high RPMs. On paper, it pushed 173 horsepower at the crankshaft. But dyno runs at the rear wheel told the real story. Over 160 horsepower at just under 10,000 RPM. That meant explosive acceleration and a top-end charge that made grown men scream into their helmets. Torque? A mountain of it, peaking around 135 Newton meters, nearly 100 pound-feet, at just 7,000 RPM. That torque curve wasn't peaky. It pulled like a freight train from 4,000 RPM all the way to redline. And that's where the danger lived. Unlike traditional sport bikes, the Hayabusa didn't demand perfect gear selection. You could roll the throttle in 3rd, 4th, even 5th, and it would still hurl you forward like you'd been hit by a truck. Some called it forgiving, others called it terrifying. But where did that power come from? Secrets under the skin. The engine architecture was deceptively simple. Twin overhead cams, a cross-flow head with 4 valves per cylinder. But Suzuki pushed the limits of intake and exhaust flow with a pressurized ram air system. At high speed, cool air was forced into the airbox, slightly pressurizing it and increasing oxygen density, essentially free boost. The forged aluminum pistons were kept light and strong, seated into steel cylinder liners surrounded by aluminum jugs. The counterbalancer shaft helped cancel vibration, which allowed the engine to be mounted directly to the frame. That wasn't just for packaging. It increased overall chassis stiffness, letting the whole bike feel like one solid machine. But the real wizardry was in the mapping. Suzuki engineers fine-tuned the fuel injection to deliver a smooth, but deceptive, throttle response. Early Hayabusas had a pause and punch feeling around low RPMs, but once it hit the mid-range, the thing woke up like a beast breaking its chains. And the gearbox? A 6-speed constant mesh unit with relatively long ratios and a chain final drive. Nothing exotic, but deadly effective. It let the engine stay in its power band without excessive shifting. You could run the quarter mile in under 10 seconds, and still cruise on the highway at 4,000 RPM in top gear. The top speed truce. By 2000, rumors began to swirl about Kawasaki preparing a challenger, the ZX-12R. Tensions were high. Europe was considering regulating or banning motorcycles that exceeded 300 kilometers per hour. So the major manufacturers did something almost unthinkable. They made a deal. An informal agreement was reached. No production motorcycle would be allowed to exceed 186 miles per hour, or about 299 kilometers per hour. It wasn't publicized, but it was enforced internally with electronic limiters. That meant one thing. The unrestricted 1999 Hayabusa, with its 312 kilometers per hour top speed, would go down in history as the fastest stock production motorcycle of the 20th century. No modern bike could legally take its crown, unless hacked or modified. Collectors scrambled to buy that first-year model. Riders whispered stories of runs across empty highways where the needle hit the stop. Police departments shook their heads. Some insurers flat-out refused to cover it. But the engine had more to give. The engine that broke the rules. While the chassis evolved slightly over the years, the heart of the Hayabusa stayed consistent from 1999 to 2007. Suzuki tweaked the mapping. They reinforced the subframe after reports of stress fractures. But the engine? It remained mostly untouched. Why? Because it worked. Riders praised its balance. Journalists gushed about its flexibility. It was both a track weapon and a long-distance cruiser. Even at high altitude, the fuel injection system kept things precise. The real secret wasn't peak power. It was the area under the curve. This engine didn't just hit a number. It pulled hard everywhere. You could drag race, tour across continents, or just destroy your buddy's Ducati on a straight highway run. And that scared people. The second generation arrives. In 2008, Suzuki made their move. The second generation Hayabusa was unveiled. The frame stayed mostly the same, but the engine was now bored and stroked to 1,340 cubic centimeters. That's 82 cubic inches, massive for a sport bike. The bore stayed at 81 millimeters, but the stroke increased to 65 millimeters. This changed everything. Longer stroke meant more torque, more mid-range, and a slightly lower rev ceiling, but a much fatter power band. The new compression ratio? A high-strung 12.5 to 1. They upgraded the cylinder head with more compact chambers, lighter titanium valves, and a new chain-driven hydraulic tensioner for valve timing. The intake got a set of 44mm SDTV throttle bodies with dual butterfly valves per cylinder, electronic control on one, rider control on the other. This let the bike blend performance and rideability across different throttle demands. The crankshaft was beefier. Pistons were lightened with ion-coated rings. And the rods? Shot-peened for extra durability. They also revised the breathing system by adding reed valves to the crankcase, controlling pressure pulses that could rob power. The result? A claimed 197 horsepower at the crank, with real-world dyno numbers putting it at over 172 horsepower at the rear wheel, peaking at 10,100 RPM. Torque was even more impressive. 102 pound-feet, around 139 Newton-meters, at just 500 RPM, 7,600 RPM. That meant brutal roll-on power. In real-world terms, the second-gen Hayabusa could launch from 60 to 100 miles per hour in the blink of an eye. No downshift needed. By now, the Hayabusa engine wasn't just a piece of hardware, it was a legend. But Suzuki wasn't done. The new exhaust system was revised into a 4-2-1-2 configuration. That means the four headers merged into two mid-pipes, then joined again, then split into twin mufflers. The reason? Emissions. Euro 3 compliance required a catalytic converter and O2 sensors. The mufflers got larger, heavier, but the tone? Still raw, deep, and unmistakable. The gearbox was upgraded with a slipper clutch. That made aggressive downshifts smoother and safer at high speed. Suspension was updated. Brakes too. But again, the engine was the crown jewel, and riders felt it. At any gear, in any condition, the Hayabusa just surged forward. Still, there was a catch. With each new model year, Suzuki had to walk a tightrope, balancing raw power with tighter emissions and noise regulations. But instead of neutering the engine, they refined it. Every generation brought smoother delivery, better throttle response, and smarter control systems. When the second generation Hayabusa roared into the 2010s, it wasn't just aging, it was facing extinction. The world was changing. Noise regulations tightened, emissions laws toughened, and the motorcycle industry found itself in a trap. How do you preserve the raw fury of a legendary engine without breaking the rules? For Suzuki, that challenge came with a deadline. Eurovir was looming, and by 2018, it became clear. The Hayabusa wouldn't make it, but instead of giving up, Suzuki made a decision. They would reinvent the legend, revive it with modern technology without erasing the heart that made it feared and worshipped. And that led to the rebirth. Enter the third generation. In 2021, after a short production pause, Suzuki unveiled the third generation Hayabusa. To outsiders, it looked like a cosmetic upgrade. But under the skin, this was a surgical operation. A complete rework of the original 1,340 cubic centimeter engine. It started with the basics. The displacement stayed the same, 1,340 cubic centimeters, bore at 81 millimeters, stroke at 65 millimeters. But nearly every internal component was rethought, revised, or replaced. Suzuki's engineers began by lightening the pistons and connecting rods, shaving grams off where it mattered most, reciprocating mass. The cams were reprofiled for better low to mid-range torque. Valve springs were stiffer, bearings were refined, and the crankshaft was polished to reduce friction. The goal? Not just peak power, but responsiveness. The kind that makes the engine feel like an extension of your nervous system. Instant torque, immediate punch. And it worked. Torque delivery was rebalanced. Instead of chasing a top-end number, Suzuki aimed for usable thrust, right where real-world riders need it. The third-gen Hayabusa now peaks at 150 Newton-meters of torque, hitting hard from as low as 4,000 RPM and pulling all the way to redline. That meant one thing. This engine didn't scream like a superbike. It growled like a predator. That's where the Hayabusa's real evolution happened. The new engine came with ride-by-wire throttle, which let them integrate a full electronic control suite. Instead of a cable yanking open a butterfly valve, sensors translated rider input into precision valve movement. That meant smoother throttle delivery, better fuel economy, and advanced control. But what made this system terrifyingly effective was how it paired with Suzuki's Intelligent Ride System, SIRS. With SIRS, the Hayabusa engine became programmable. You could select from 3 different power modes, change traction control levels, adjust engine braking, even control how hard the bike launches off the line. This wasn't a superbike anymore. This was a smart bike with a 1,340 cubic centimeter animal caged inside. And if you wanted to unleash it, you could. Disable the electronics, crack open the throttle, and you'd still get the raw fury that made the Hayabusa famous. Why it still rules the streets. What makes the 1,340 cubic centimeter Hayabusa engine so unique isn't just displacement. It's how that displacement is used. Most high-performance motorcycles rely on high-revving, short-stroke designs. They make peak power at 13,000 RPM, but have no grunt below 7,000. The Hayabusa is different. With its longer stroke, high compression ratio, and revised intake geometry, this engine is a torque monster. It doesn't beg for revs. It builds power smoothly, controllably, with muscle car-like delivery. The valve train uses lightweight titanium valves, which allow quicker movement without floating at high RPMs. Those valves are actuated by direct cams and driven by a tensioned chain system, making the top end both compact and precise. The pistons are cast with cooling oil jets underneath each crown, keeping temperatures stable even at prolonged high speeds. The cylinder walls are coated with Suzuki's SCEM plating, a nickel phosphorus silicon carbide surface that reduces friction and improves heat dissipation. And then there's the clutch, a modern slipper assist unit, which keeps the rear wheel in control during aggressive downshifts while reducing hand fatigue at the lever. It's part racing clutch, part touring aid. Exactly what a Hayabusa rider needs when flying through the gears at over 180 miles per hour. So why did Suzuki keep this engine alive when so many others died out? Simple. Because no other engine offered this balance of speed, torque, strength, and reliability in one package. The 1,340 cubic centimeter Hayabusa engine wasn't built just for racetracks. It was built for domination, for autobahns, for open desert highways, for the kind of places where speed isn't just a number, it's a way of life. And it didn't just survive emissions regulations, it adapted. Suzuki redesigned the exhaust system with dual catalytic converters and carefully placed O2 sensors. They even reshaped the headers to preserve flow while meeting Euro 5 compliance. The mufflers got heavier, yes, but the sound? Still unmistakable. Even the engine cooling system evolved. A high-capacity radiator with twin electric fans keeps temperatures under control during urban riding. The oil cooler was redesigned for better thermal efficiency, allowing the engine to stay cool without bloating the bike's dimensions. These aren't changes made for headlines. They're made for the long game, for riders who plan to keep their Hayabusa for years and ride it hard the whole way. On paper, the latest Hayabusa engine may seem less extreme. The official output is around 187 horsepower, slightly down from the previous gen's claimed peak. But dyno graphs tell a different story. The new engine produces more power in the first 75% of the rev range than its predecessor. That means in real-world riding, on the road, in traffic, or in top gear roll-ons, the new Hayabusa feels faster, feels more alive. It's like comparing a dragster to a fighter jet. One launches violently once, the other pulls with relentless force across a mile of airspace. The Hayabusa engine doesn't spike, it climbs, and that makes it lethal in the hands of riders who know how to use it. Today, the 1,340 cubic centimeter Hayabusa engine has become more than a power plant. It's a platform, an icon, and in some cases, a weapon. In the drag racing world, Hayabusa engines are tuned to over 500 horsepower using turbochargers, nitrous, and forged internals. Builders love it for one reason. The bottom end of this engine is built like a tank. The crankshaft is overbuilt. The cases are thick. The transmission gears are wide. It takes abuse like no other inline-four. There's a reason the Hayabusa engine is used in kit cars, ultralight aircraft, and even racing sidecars. It's compact, lightweight, and dependable. And when tuned, it becomes something else entirely. A fire-breathing monster capable of outpacing cars with 10 times the budget. But even in stock form, there's something about it that no dyno sheet can capture. It's the way it makes you feel. Twist the throttle in fourth gear at 100 miles per hour, and the world changes. The noise deepens. The wind gets sharper. The horizon starts coming at you like a fist. And through it all, the engine never complains. It just delivers, again and again and again.